I stood in the dimly lit foyer of my sister's mansion. The kind of place that screamed wealth with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers dangling like frozen tears. My hands trembled as I clutched the embossed invitation. Its gold lettering mocking me with every word, "Celebrate Eleanor's success." My sister. Eleanor. The golden child. The one who'd climbed the corporate ladder while I scraped by in a world that never seemed to want me. The invitation wasn't really for might, was a summons. A chance for them to parade her achievements and remind me of my failures. I hadn't seen her in years. Not since the last family gathering where she'd laughed in my face. Her voice dripping with condescension as she called me a nobody with dreams too big for her wallet. I'd spent years swallowing the humiliation. But tonight, something in me snapped. I wasn't here to clap for her. I was here to settle a score. The air smelled of lavender and old money as I stepped into the grand hall. Faces I barely recognized, cousins, aunts, family friends swirled around me, their laughter sharp like broken glass. They were all here to fawn over Eleanor, the CEO of some tech empire. Her name plastered across magazines I couldn't afford to buy. I adjusted my thrift store dress, the one I'd spent hours choosing to look like I belonged, and scanned the room. There she was, radiant in a crimson gown, her smile a weapon as she held court. Our eyes met, and for a moment, I saw the flicker of surprise in her gaze. She hadn't expected me to show up. Good. That was the first cut. Clara, she called, her voice syrupy, gliding toward me with the grace of someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. I'm so glad you made it. I was just telling everyone how proud we are of you. The lie stung, but I smiled, my lips tight. Proud. She'd never been proud. She'd spent our childhood stealing my moments-me ideas. My friends. Even our parents' love always leaving me in her shadow. Oh, Eleanor, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Her friends chuckled, oblivious to the venom lacing my words. She gestured for me to join her on the dais, where a microphone waited like a guillotine. They wanted me to speak, to gush about her success. Fine. I'd give them a speech they'd never forget. As I stepped onto the platform, the crowd hushed, their eyes pinning me like a specimen under glass. I could feel Eleanor's gaze, smug, expecting me to play the role of the adoring little sister. My heart pounded, each beat a drum roll for the reckoning I'd planned. I leaned into the microphone, my voice soft at first, almost reverent. Eleanor's always been the star, hasn't she? The one who could do no wrong. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. I paused, letting the moment stretch, savoring the weight of their attention. But let's talk about what it takes to get there. The sacrifices. The people she stepped on. The air shifted. A collective intake of breath. Eleanor's smile faltered. Just for a second. But I saw it. I had her. I didn't plan to come here with hate in my heart. For years, I tried to love her, to believe we could be sisters, not rivals. Growing up, she was the one who got the bigger room, the better toys, the louder applause. I was the afterthought, the one who tried too hard and failed too often. When I told her I wanted to start my own business, she laughed, said I'd never make it. When I lost everything, me savings, my dreams, she didn't call. Not once. But now, standing here, I wasn't that broken girl anymore. I'd spent the last year digging, learning things about Eleanor's pristine career that weren't so pristine. Secrets she thought were buried. I wasn't just here to embarrass her. I was here to expose her. Clara, maybe you should, Eleanor started, her voice cutting through the silence. But I raised a hand, silencing her. The crowd leaned forward, hungry for drama they didn't yet understand. No. Eleanor, let me finish. You invited me to talk about your success. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the deals you made. The lies you told to climb that ladder. Her face paled, and I felt a rush of power, like lightning in my veins. I hadn't planned to go this far. Not yet. But her mockery over the years, her dismissal of might fueled me. I wanted her to feel what I'd felt, small, insignificant, betrayed. I started with the small truths, the ones everyone could nod along to. Eleanor's brilliant. No one denies that. She's built an empire, hasn't she? But empires have foundations. And hers, well, let's just say they're not as solid as you think. I saw her shift, her hands clenching the stem of her wine glass. The crowd was mine now, their curiosity a living thing. I could have stopped there, let the implication hang, but I didn't. I leaned closer to the microphone, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You see, I found something interesting about her company's early days. Something about creative accounting. Gasps echoed, and Eleanor's eyes widened. A deer caught in headlights. I'd spent months tracking down her former assistant, a woman she'd fired without cause. That assistant had kept records mails, financial reports, proof of corners cut and laws bent. I didn't have it all here. Not yet. But I had enough to plant the seed. The room buzzed with whispers, and I felt a thrill I hadn't expected. Revenge was supposed to feel cold, calculated. But this was alive. Electric. Eleanor stepped forward, her smile a mask now, brittle and cracking. Clara, this isn't the place. She hissed, low enough that only I could hear. Oh, but it is. I whispered back, my eyes locked on hers. You invited me to talk about your success. I'm just telling the truth. For the first time in years, I saw fear in her eyes, and it was intoxicating. But somewhere, deep inside, a voice whispered, is this who you are? I pushed it down. I wasn't done yet. The silence in the room was suffocating, the kind that presses against your chest and makes every breath a rebellion. Eleanor stood frozen, her crimson gown a stark contrast to her paling face, and I could almost hear her mind racing, searching for a way to regain control. The crowd was no longer hers. They were mine, their eyes darting between us, waiting for the next blow. I hadn't planned to unravel her so quickly, but her smugness, that same smugness she'd wielded against me for years, had lit a fuse I couldn't douse. Clara, she said, her voice louder now, a forced laugh threading through it. You always did have a flair for drama. The crowd tittered, but it was nervous, uncertain. They could sense the shift, the way the air had thickened with something dangerous. I stepped closer to the microphone, my hand steady now, fueled by the fire she'd ignited in me long ago. Drama. No. Eleanor, this isn't drama. This is truth. You've built your empire on lies, and I'm not the only one who knows it. I let the words hang, watching her flinch as if I'd struck her. The truth was, I didn't have all the evidence not yet, but I had enough to make her sweat. Her former assistant, Mia, had been a gold mine, her bitterness a mirror to my own. She told me about the offshore accounts, the doctored numbers, the deals made in shadowed rooms. I didn't need to prove it tonight. I just needed to plant the doubt. And from the way the crowd whispered, their eyes narrowing at Eleanor, I knew I'd succeeded. She moved toward me, her heels clicking like gunshots on the polished floor. Enough. Clara, she said, her voice low but sharp, a blade wrapped in silk. You're embarrassing yourself. That was her tactic, always make me feel small, always make me doubt. But I wasn't the girl who cowered anymore. Am I? I shot back, loud enough for the microphone to catch. Or are you just scared of what I might say next? The crowd gasped. A collective inhale that fed my resolve. I could see our parents in the corner, their faces tight with worry. But they didn't move. They never did. They'd always chosen Eleanor, their perfect daughter, over me. Tonight, that would change. I turned back to the crowd, my voice steady, each word a brick in the wall I was building around her. Let's talk about loyalty, I said. Eleanor's always been loyal to her ambition, hasn't she? But what about the people who helped her get there? The ones she discarded. I thought of Mia, her voice trembling as she told me how Eleanor had fired her without warning, how she'd taken credit for Mia's work to secure her first big promotion. I thought of myself, the sister she'd mocked and ignored. She's not who you think she is, I continued, my voice rising. She's not a hero. She's a thief. The word landed like a grenade, and I saw Eleanor's hand tremble, her wine glass nearly slipping. I could have stopped there. I could have let the accusation linger, let the crowd dissect her with their whispers. But something in me, something raw and jagged, pushed me further. You want to know the real Eleanor? Ask about the contracts she signed with companies that vanished overnight. Ask about the money that never made it to the books. I was bluffing now, stretching the truth. But the look in her eyes told me I'd hit close to home. She grabbed my arm, her grip tight, her nails digging into my skin. Clara, stop this, she whispered, her voice cracking. You don't know what you're doing. But I did. For the first time, I knew exactly what I was doing. I pulled away, my arm stinging, and faced the crowd again. She invited me here to brag about her success, but she didn't expect me to tell the truth. She thought I'd stay quiet, like I always have. But not tonight. The room was a sea of shocked faces, some nodding, some shaking their heads, but all of them riveted. I felt powerful, untouchable. But that voice inside me grew louder. Is this justice? Or is it vengeance? I ignored it. Eleanor had mocked me for too long, belittled me, made me feel like nothing. This was my moment, and I wasn't letting it go. Clara, please, she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear now, her voice trembling with something that sounded like fear. You're my sister. Don't do this. The word sister hit me like a punch, and for a moment, I faltered. I saw us as kids, playing in the backyard, her braiding my hair before she learned to see me as competition. I saw the sister I'd loved before she became the enemy. But then I remembered her laughter, her cruel words at that last family gathering, the way she'd turned our parents against me. The moment passed, and my resolve hardened. You stopped being my sister the day you decided I was nothing, I said, my voice cold. The crowd was silent now, the weight of our history filling the room. I stepped back, letting the microphone amplify my final words. Enjoy your party, Eleanor. I hope it was worth it. I turned and walked off the dais, my heart pounding, my breath shallow. The crowd parted for me, their whispers a chorus of judgment. But I didn't care. I'd done what I came to do. I'd stripped away her perfect mask, and for the first time, I felt free. But as I reached the edge of the room, I glanced back and saw her standing there, alone on the dais, her eyes glistening with tears. And that voice inside me whispered again, "What have you done?" The night air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside, the chill cutting through my thin dress. The mansion loomed behind me, its windows glowing with the warmth I'd just shattered. I'd planned this moment for months, rehearsed every word. But now that it was done, my chest felt hollow, like I'd carved out a piece of myself and left it on that dais. I wanted to feel triumphant, but all I felt was the weight of Eleanor's tears. The way her face had crumpled as I walked away. Had I gone too far? The question gnawed at me, but I pushed it down, focusing on the crunch of gravel under my shoes as I headed toward my car. I'd exposed her, humiliated her in front of everyone she cared about. That was enough, wasn't it? I slid into the driver's seat, my hands shaking as I gripped the wheel. My phone buzzed in my purse, but I ignored it. I didn't want to see the messages, our parents' disappointment, our cousin's shock, or worse, Eleanor's attempt to spin this in her favor. I'd seen the fear in her eyes, the crack in her perfect facade, but I'd also seen something else hurt. And that hurt mirrored something deep inside me, something I hadn't expected to feel. Revenge was supposed to be sweet, but this tasted bitter, like ashes in my mouth. I started the car, the engine's hum drowning out the noise in my head, and drove into the night. The city lights blurred past, each one a reminder of the life I'd never had. I'd spent years chasing dreams that slipped through my fingers, while Eleanor's star kept rising. She'd always been the one who won, the one who got the applause, the one our parents bragged about at every holiday. I was the failure, the one who tried and fell short. But tonight, I'd taken something from her. I'd made her feel what it was like to be small. So why didn't it feel good? Why did I keep seeing her face? Her eyes glistening, her voice calling me sister. I pulled into the parking lot of my tiny apartment, the kind of place Eleanor would never set foot in. The walls were thin, the carpet stained, but it was mine, paid for with the scraps of my life. Inside, I dropped my purse and sank onto the couch, my dress still clinging to me like a costume from a play I didn't want to be in. My phone buzzed again, insistent, and this time I couldn't ignore it. It was a text from Mom. Clara, how could you? Come back and fix this. Fix it. There was no fixing this. I'd burned the bridge between me and Eleanor, and maybe between me and the whole family. I tossed the phone aside, my head spinning. I thought back to the moment I decided to do this. It was 6 months ago, when I'd seen Eleanor's face on a billboard. Her smile perfect, her title gleaming, CEO of Horizon Tech. That same day, I'd lost my job, my little startup folding under the weight of debt. I'd called her, hoping for a shred of support, but she'd brush me off, her voice cold. Maybe you're just not cut out for this, Clara, she'd said. Those words had festered, growing into something dark and unstoppable. That's when I'd found Mia, Eleanor's old assistant, in a dingy coffee shop, her eyes full of the same resentment I carried. She'd handed me a USB drive filled with emails, memos, proof of Eleanor's shady deals. It was my weapon, and tonight, I'd used it. But now, sitting alone in my apartment, the victory felt empty. I'd wanted justice, but what I'd done felt more like vengeance. I'd wanted her to hurt, but seeing her pain hadn't healed mine. I stood and paced, my footsteps echoing in the small space. What had I expected? That humiliating her would erase the years of feeling invisible, that it would make our parents love me more. I stopped, catching my reflection in the cracked mirror on the wall. My eyes were wild, my face flushed with the aftermath of my own anger. I didn't recognize myself. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a voicemail. I hesitated, then played it. Eleanor's voice filled the room, soft and broken. Clara, I don't know why you hate me so much, but I'm sorry. Can we talk? Please. The words hit me like a wave, pulling me under. Sorry. Eleanor didn't apologize. She didn't beg. But there it was, her voice trembling, raw in a way I'd never heard. I played it again, then again, each time feeling the ground shift beneath me. Was this real? Or was it another one of her games? Another way to pull me back into her orbit? I sank back onto the couch, my mind racing. I'd spent so long building her up as the villain, the sister who'd stolen everything from me. But what if I was wrong? What if there was more to her, to us, than I'd let myself see? The thought was unbearable, because it meant I'd just destroyed something that might have been salvageable. I thought of our childhood, the rare moments when we'd been allies giggling under the covers, sharing secrets. Those moments were buried under years of resentment. But they were there, weren't they? I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the guilt creeping in. I'd wanted to hurt her, but now I wasn't sure who I'd hurt more. The voicemail played on a loop in my head as I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Eleanor's voice, fragile and pleading, was a ghost I couldn't shake. I wanted to believe it was a trick, a performance to save face. But there was something in her tone, something real that made my chest ache. I'd spent so long painting her as the enemy, the sister who'd trampled me to get to the top, that I hadn't considered she might feel anything at all. But that word, sorry, hung in the air like a question I wasn't ready to answer. I turned off my phone, needing silence. But the quiet only amplified my thoughts. What had I done? And what came next? Morning came too soon, the sunlight harsh through my threadbare curtains. I dragged myself to the kitchen, brewed coffee that tasted like regret, and tried to piece together my next move. I'd humiliated Eleanor in front of her world, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. The USB drive for Mia was still in my purse, a ticking bomb of evidence I hadn't fully unleashed. I could take it further, send it to the press, to her board, to anyone who'd listen. But as I sipped my coffee, the idea felt heavier than it had before. Destroying her career, her life, wouldn't undo the past. It wouldn't make me whole. So why couldn't I let it go? I spent the day pacing my apartment, the walls closing in as I wrestled with my own anger. Part of me wanted to call her, to hear her out. But the other part, the part that remembered every slight, every laugh at my expense, screamed to keep going, to finish what I'd started. By afternoon, I couldn't stand the confinement anymore. I grabbed my coat and headed out. No destination in mind, just a need to move. The city was alive, indifferent to my turmoil, its streets buzzing with people who had no idea my world was unraveling. I ended up at a park, sitting on a bench, watching families laugh and play. It reminded me of what I'd lost, not just Eleanor, but the family we used to be. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I flinched. Another text from Mom, Clara. We need to talk. Come to the house tonight. The house. Our parents' sprawling colonial, where Eleanor and I had grown up, where every corner held a memory of her outshining me. I didn't want to go, but I knew I couldn't avoid them forever. They'd want answers. And maybe, just maybe, I'd find some too. I drove there in a daze, the familiar streets a map of my past. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just bigger now, carrying the weight of what I'd done. Mom opened the door before I could knock, her face a mix of worry and disapproval. Clara, what were you thinking? She said, pulling me inside. Dad was in the living room, his arms crossed, his silence louder than words. I sat on the couch, feeling like a child again, waiting for a lecture. You humiliated your sister, Mom continued, her voice shaking. In front of everyone. Why? I wanted to scream that Eleanor had humiliated me first, that she'd spent years making me feel worthless. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said, she deserved it. The words sounded hollow, even to me. Dad finally spoke, his voice low. Clara, you're family. You don't do this to family. Family. The word felt like a knife, twisting in my gut. They'd always chosen Eleanor. Always seen her as the one worth protecting. Where was that family loyalty when she laughed at my dreams? I shot back, my voice rising. When she took everything and left me with nothing. Mom's eyes widened. And for the first time, I saw something like guilt in her expression. We didn't know, she said softly. We thought you two would work it out. Work it out. They hadn't noticed the war between us. The way Eleanor's success had been built on my failures. I stood, my hands shaking. You didn't see me, I said, my voice breaking. Neither of you did. You saw her. Always her. The room was silent. The truth I'd carried for years finally out in the open. Mom reached for me, but I stepped back. I need to go, I said, turning toward the door. But before I could leave, Dad said, she's coming here tonight. Eleanor. She wants to talk. My heart stopped. Talk. After what I'd done, I wanted to run, to hide. But something in his voice, something heavy with expectation, made me stay. When Eleanor arrived, she looked different. No crimson gown. No perfect smile. Just jeans. A sweater. Her face bare of makeup. She looked human. Clara, she said, her voice soft, like the voicemail. Can we talk? Alone. I nodded, though every instinct screamed to say no. We went to the backyard, the same one where we'd played as kids, the air thick with memories. She sat on the old swing, her hands clasped tightly. I didn't know you felt like this, she said, her eyes on the ground. I didn't know I'd hurt you so much. I wanted to laugh, to tell her she was lying. But the pain in her voice was real. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd misread her all along. The swing creaked under Eleanor's weight, a sound that pulled me back to summers when we were young, when rivalry was just a game and not a wound. I stood a few feet away, my arms crossed, guarding myself against whatever she was about to say. The night was cool, the stars sharp above us, and I felt exposed, like the universe was watching our reckoning. You didn't know? I said, my voice sharp enough to cut through the quiet. You laughed at me. Eleanor. You called me a failure. You made sure everyone knew I'd never measure up. Her head snapped up, her eyes meeting mine, and I saw something there: regret. Maybe. Or shame. It threw me off balance. I was wrong, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was cruel. And I'm sorry. The words hit me harder than I expected, like a punch I hadn't braced for. I wanted to believe her, but years of resentment held me back. Why now? I asked, stepping closer, my voice trembling. Because I called you out. Because I embarrassed you in front of your precious friends. She flinched, and I saw her hands tighten on the swing's ropes. No, she said. Because I saw you last night. Really saw you. And I realized how much I'd lost you. Lost me. The idea was absurd. She hadn't lost me, pushed me away, brick by brick, until there was nothing left but anger. But the way she looked at me, her eyes glistening in the moonlight, made me question everything. You didn't care when I was drowning, I said, my voice cracking. When my business failed. When I had nothing. You didn't even call. She stood, closing the distance between us. And I hated how small she looked. How vulnerable. I didn't know how bad it was. She said, I thought you were fine. Clara. You always seemed so strong. Strong. I'd been breaking for years. And she hadn't noticed. I turned away, staring at the dark outline of the trees, trying to hold on to my anger. It was easier than facing the hurt beneath it. You took everything, I said, my voice low. Our parents' love. Our family's pride. My chance to shine. And you laughed when I tried to be something. She stepped closer, her hand reaching for me. But I pulled back. I was jealous, she said, the confession spilling out like a dam breaking. You were always the dreamer, the one with big ideas. I was scared you'd outshine me. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Outshine you. You're Eleanor, the star. I was never a threat. But she shook her head, her voice fierce now. You were. You are. You have this fire, Clara. This passion I never had. I worked hard, but I played dirty because I was afraid of you. The words stunned me, rewriting the story I'd told myself for years. Eleanor, afraid of me. It didn't make sense. But the rawness in her voice, the way her hands shook, told me it was true. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was wrong. But something stopped me. The anger I'd carried felt heavier now, like a burden I didn't want anymore. We stood there, the silence stretching between us, heavy with years of unspoken pain. What do you want, Eleanor? I asked finally, my voice softer than I meant it to be. She took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine. I want my sister back, she said. I want to fix this. Fix this. The idea seemed impossible, a bridge too broken to rebuild. But as I looked at her, I saw the girl who'd once braided my hair, who'd shared her ice cream when mine fell on the ground. And I felt something shift, a crack in the wall I'd built around my heart. I don't know if we can, I said, honest for the first time that night. But I'm tired, Eleanor. Tired of hating you. It was a confession I hadn't meant to make, but it felt like a weight lifting. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. And for a moment, we were just two sisters, standing in the backyard of our childhood, trying to find a way back to each other. I'll make it right, she said, her voice firm. I don't know how, but I will. I didn't know if I believed her, but I wanted to. God, I wanted to. We went back inside. The house quiet now. Our parents watching us like we were fragile things that might break. They didn't ask questions, and I was grateful for that. Eleanor and I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd done homework as kids, and talked. Not about the party, not about the accusations, but about small things, memories, moments we'd forgotten. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. As I drove home that night, the USB drive still in my purse, I realized something. I didn't want to use it anymore. Revenge had felt good for a moment. But this fragile, messy attempt at redemption felt better. The days that followed were a blur of doubt and hope, like walking a tightrope between the past and a future I couldn't quite see. Eleanor called me the next morning, her voice hesitant but warm, asking if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, though part of me still braced for a trap, for the old Eleanor to reappear with her sharp smile and sharper words. But when I saw her at the cafe, sitting in a corner booth with no makeup and a nervous fidget, I realized she was trying. Really trying. We talked for hours. Not about the big things, not the party. Not the accusations, but about the small ones. The books we'd loved as kids. The way we'd fought over the last slice of pizza. It was tentative. Fragile. But it was something. I went home that night and stared at the USB drive on my kitchen counter. It sat there like a loaded gun. Its contents a threat I could still wield. Part of me wanted to destroy it. To erase the evidence and let this new, shaky truce with Eleanor grow. But another part, the part that remembered her laughter, her dismissal, wanted to keep it. Just in case. I didn't trust her completely. Not yet. Trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not after years of being burned. But I didn't want to be the person who held on to hate forever. I wanted to be better than that. A week later, Eleanor invited me to her office. A gleaming tower of glass and steel that felt like another world. I hesitated, but curiosity won out. I wanted to see her in her element, to understand the life she'd built. The receptionist greeted me like I was someone important. And for a moment, I felt a flicker of pride. My sister had done this. Built this empire. Flaws and all. When I reached her office, she was waiting. Her desk cluttered with papers. Her eyes tired but bright. "I want to show you something," she said, handing me a folder. Inside were financial reports. Clean ones. And a letter to her board admitting to past mistakes. "I'm coming clean," she said. "Because of you." I stared at the papers, my throat tight. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She looked at me, her eyes steady. "Because you were right. I did things I'm not proud of. And I don't want to be that person anymore." I wanted to believe her. But the cynic in me wondered if this was just damage control. A way to neutralize my threat. "What about the USB drive?" I asked, testing her. Her face fell, but she didn't flinch. "Use it if you want," she said. "I deserve it. But I'm trying to make things right. Clara. For you. For me. For us." Her honesty disarmed me. And for the first time, I saw not the sister who'd hurt me, but the one who was trying to change. We spent the afternoon talking. Not as enemies, but as sisters. She told me about the pressure she'd felt. The fear of failure that had driven her to cut corners. I told her about my own struggles. The way her success had made me feel invisible. It wasn't easy, peeling back the layers of hurt. But it was honest. When I left her office, I felt lighter, like I'd left some of my anger behind. But the USB drive was still in my purse. A reminder that trust was a fragile thing. That night, I dreamed of our childhood. Of a day when Eleanor had fallen off her bike and I'd run to help her. Both of us laughing through her tears. I woke up with an ache in my chest. A longing for the sisters we used to be. I knew we couldn't go back. But maybe we could build something new. I called her the next day, and we made plans to meet again. Slowly, we were finding our way, one conversation at a time. But the USB drive stayed on my counter, a shadow I couldn't quite shake. A month later, Eleanor invited me to a family dinner at our parents' house. I braced myself, expecting tension, but it was different this time. Mom and Dad hugged me, their eyes soft with something like understanding. Eleanor was there, laughing with Dad over a bad joke. And for a moment, it felt like home. After dinner, she pulled me aside and handed me an envelope. Inside was a job offer not at her company, but at a startup she'd invested in. "They need someone with your vision," she said. "I told them about you." I stared at the letter, my heart pounding. It wasn't just a job, it was a chance to rebuild, to be seen. I accepted the offer, not because I trusted her completely, but because I wanted to believe in the possibility of us. The job was challenging, a whirlwind of ideas and risks, but it felt right. For the first time, I wasn't chasing Eleanor's shadow, I was building my own light. And yet, the USB drive remained, a silent question mark. I knew I'd have to decide soon to destroy it, or use it. But for now, I let myself hope that redemption was possible. For both of us. The startup was a chaos of creativity, a place where my ideas weren't just heard, they were needed. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something, not just surviving. My days were filled with meetings, sketches, late-night brainstorming sessions, and the thrill of seeing my vision take shape. But even as I threw myself into the work, Eleanor's shadow lingered. The job was a gift from her, a gesture of reconciliation, but it also felt like a debt. I couldn't shake the fear that she'd pull it away, that this was just another game. The USB drive sat in my desk drawer now, a constant reminder of the power I still held over her. Eleanor and I met regularly now. Coffee dates that turned into dinners. Conversations that danced around the past but never quite touched it. She was different, softer, more open, but I still saw flashes of the old Eleanor, the one who'd always needed to be the best. I wanted to trust her, but trust was a muscle I hadn't used in years, and it ached with every step. One evening, as we sat in a quiet restaurant, she reached across the table and touched my hand. "I'm proud of you," she said, her eyes steady. "You're doing what I never could, building something real. From the heart." The words hit me hard, and I felt tears prick my eyes. I wanted to believe her, but the USB drive burned in my mind. I started seeing a therapist, someone to help me untangle the mess of anger and hope I carried. She asked me why I held onto the USB drive, why I couldn't let it go. "It's my safety net," I told her. "If she betrays me again, I need to be ready." But even as I said it, I knew it was more than that. It was my last piece of control, my last weapon in a war I wasn't sure I wanted to fight anymore. The therapist pushed me to think about forgiveness, not just for Eleanor, but for myself. "You're carrying her mistakes," she said, "and your own." I hated how true that felt. One night, I invited Eleanor to my apartment. It was the first time she'd seen where I lived, and I saw her eyes take in the cracked walls, the second-hand furniture. She didn't comment, but I could feel her surprise. We sat on the couch, drinking cheap wine, and I told her about the startup, about the ideas I was pouring into it. She listened, really listened, and for a moment, I forgot the USB drive, forgot the past. "I want us to be sisters again," she said, her voice soft. "Not just a name, but for real." I nodded, my throat tight, but I couldn't say the words back. Not yet. The next day, I got a call from Mia, Eleanor's former assistant. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "Clara, there's more. I found new emails, worse than the ones I gave you. She's still hiding things." My stomach dropped. I'd started to believe in Eleanor, started to let my guard down. Mia sent me the files, and as I read them, my heart sank. More deals, more lies, recent ones. Eleanor hadn't changed, just gotten better at hiding it. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected, a fresh wound on top of old scars. I clutched the USB drive, my resolve hardening. I'd been a fool to trust her. I confronted her that night. The new emails printed out, spread across her dining table like evidence in a trial. She stared at them, her face pale, her hands shaking. "Clara, I can explain," she said, but I cut her off. "Don't. I gave you a chance, and you lied. Again." She reached for me, but I stepped back, the USB drive heavy in my pocket. "I'm done," I said, my voice cold. "You don't get to hurt me anymore." I walked out, my heart pounding, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I'd use the USB drive, all of it, and let the world see who she really was. But as I drove home, the anger faded, replaced by a bone-deep sadness. I didn't want to destroy her. Not really. I wanted her to be the sister I'd once loved, the one who'd shared her ice cream and laughed with me. I pulled over, tears streaming down my face, and sat there, the USB drive in my hand. I could end her career, her reputation, everything. But what would that make me? The sister who'd given up on redemption. Who'd chosen revenge over hope. I didn't want to be that person. Not anymore. I went home and locked the USB drive in a box, promising myself I'd decide later. For now, I needed space. Time to figure out who I was without the weight of Eleanor's shadow. I threw myself back into the startup, letting the work fill the hole in my heart. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Months passed, and I buried myself in the startup. Its chaos a refuge from the storm inside me. The work was hard but rewarding, and for the first time, I felt like I was enough, not Eleanor's sister. Not the family failure. Just Clara. Building something real. I didn't talk to Eleanor. Not after the confrontation. Her calls went unanswered. Her texts unread. The USB drive stayed locked in its box. A ghost I wasn't ready to face. I told myself I was done with her. But every night, as I lay in bed, I saw her face pale, shaken, pleading for a chance I wasn't sure she deserved. One day, an envelope arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a letter from Eleanor. Handwritten. Her words uneven, like she'd struggled to get them out. Clara, I've stepped down as CEO. I told the board everything, every mistake, every lie. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I need you to know I'm trying to be better. For you. For us. For me. I love you. Always. I read it over and over. My heart a tangle of anger and hope. She'd done it, faced her past. Dismantled her empire. It wasn't enough to erase the hurt. But it was something. Something real. I call my therapist, needing to talk it through. She's trying, I said, my voice shaking. But I don't know if I can let go. My therapist was quiet for a moment, then asked, what do you want? Clara. Not for her, but for you. The question stopped me cold. I'd spent so long defining myself against Eleanor's shadow, her rival, that I'd forgotten who I was without her. I wanted peace. I realized. Not just with her, but with myself. I wanted to be free of the anger, the need for revenge. I wanted to be whole. I met Eleanor a week later, in the same park where I'd sat after the party. She looked different, thinner, quieter, but there was a lightness to her, like she'd shed a weight. We sat on a bench, the silence between us heavy but not hostile. I meant what I said. She told me, her voice steady. I'm done hiding. I want to earn your trust, Clara, however long it takes. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the sister I'd loved, the one I'd lost. It's not going to be easy, I said, my voice soft. But I want to try. She smiled, a real smile, and for the first time in years, I felt hope. We started small coffee dates, walks, moments where we could be sisters again. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments, tears, moments when the past reared up and threatened to pull us under. But we kept going, rebuilding one piece at a time. I never used the USB drive. One night, I took it out of its box and destroyed it, smashing it with a hammer until it was nothing but fragments. It wasn't just about letting go of the evidence, it was about letting go of the person I'd been, the one who needed revenge to feel whole. Our parents noticed the change, their relief palpable at family dinners where we laughed instead of fought. I saw them differently too, not as the parents who'd chosen Eleanor, but as people who'd done their best, flawed as it was. The startup grew, and so did I. My confidence no longer tied to Eleanor's failures or successes. I was Clara, not her shadow, not her rival, just me. Years later, at a family gathering, Eleanor raised a glass to me, her smile warm. To Clara, she said, the strongest person I know. The room cheered, and I felt tears in my eyes. Not from pain, but from something softer. Something like love. We weren't perfect, and we never would be. But we were sisters, and that was enough. As I looked at her, I realized redemption wasn't just about her changing, it was about me choosing to believe in it. To believe in us. And for the first time, I felt free.